Good evening. I'm going to ask that we bow our heads, take a moment of silence to reflect on the world today. Thank you very much. We'll officially welcome you this evening on a pretty night with good people, and we're going to do good business tonight, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But I have to warn you, it still looks like we've got a 2-bottle meeting. I don't know what time we'll get out of here.
That's water, right?
Yeah. Let's, do we have anybody that's here for the first time? On the back table over here, to my left, paperwork for the meeting you can follow. You've already been there. Very good. Let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag, which is my right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 4 on our agenda is a consideration of approving the agenda as presented. Is there a motion?
If I could request to remove, no, to move item 14, the town manager's report, up to item 11, the budget update. I can knock those two out at the same time if the board's okay.
You just want to combine to 11.
Yes, sir.
Combine 14 and 11, but in the order of 11, right?
Yes, sir.
Everybody understand the request?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, is there a motion?
Move approval as amended.
Is there a
Second.
second? Motion, second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Is approved as amended. Let's look at number 5, the minutes for December the 20th, 2016, consideration of approval. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. They're approved as presented. The next item, number 6, public comments on agenda items.
Nobody signed up.
Nobody signed up. Oh, good. Okay, I was about to say that's good, but, all right, moving right along. Number 7, discussion and possible action on canal dredging plan update. Our engineer, Shane.
Mayor, board, I moved down really fast, I was still trying to prepare my thoughts. Now I'm on the spot. I believe you all have in your packets the canal maintenance dredging master plan that has, been evolving, really since, the formation of it was approximately 2009, I think it was when we first, put together a maintenance plan, working with the committee, the dredge committee from each community that has members of the committee, and of course, the town manager and other folks. This is the update for this year. There was a monitoring survey that's part of, the recommended actions that are in the plan that happens biannually. So this past spring, there was a monitoring survey that was done. The actual full survey is probably not in this document, but you may have seen it from last year. Anyway, working through the committee, with the committee and the survey and updating all of the permits and documents, and there's some session law that's in here, and the whole guise was to put together just about anything you wanted to know about the dredging in the town is hopefully within this entire document. So the document goes through the procedures and steps to formulate a dredging cycle, if you will, which we formulated based on the number of lots in each community, the length of the canals, the cost for approximated dredging at whatever point in the future, the annual in those communities develop an annual fee, if you will, to continually to maintain, their dredge canals in their community. So this entire report, documents a lot of other things with, the history of the canal system since the town, adopted them several years ago. So I'm here to accept any questions that you have about the report, and potentially, I guess, y'all would make a motion to accept the plan, and then it would continue on into the future.
I'd like to, staff, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
I would just add that the, working group for the canal subdivisions met on December the 30th, and they support the plan. And they've worked with right angle throughout the process. So the staff recommendation is to move to approve the canal dredging update.
Okay. All right, is there a motion of any kind?
I just have, I have a question, if I could now, maybe more for the town manager, but the balance forward amounts for each of the special revenue funds, is that the balance forwarded since the last dredging?
That balance forward is actually the balance as of the 30th of June is that would be the balance forward into the new year, this current fiscal year.
So is our practice to carry a balance year to year?
Yeah, because the enabling legislation allows us to accrue those funds for up to 10 years, and that was the mechanism by which each of the subdivisions could save up their money until they needed to do a dredge, instead of getting one big gigantic assessment at a
Okay.
time.
So the canal dredging fees that are recommended for each of the special revenue funds, does it consider the balance forward?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And that-
otherwise
and
it would be
that's-
higher.
That-
Okay.
And it's reviewed and updated every year to coincide with the decision on the adoption of the budget.
Okay,
Because you only get one shot a year on setting that assessment. You collect them like taxes.
okay, thank you.
I have a question. Am I reading this right? The next dredging is November 18?
That's the next projected
Okay.
cycle. And that's based on, when the previous dredges were conducted, and we estimated, it's around about a 10-year
Yeah,
cycle.
I noticed that.
So the next one would be fall of 18 and into 19. Usually, you can't start until November
Right.
1st or something, when turtle season is officially over, and you can work through the winter.
Okay, yeah, that 10-year was interesting because the sand renourishment is about 10 years too, right? I mean,
Yeah, whenever that legislation was initially adopted, was it was a 5-year carry forward, and we were getting a better cyclic on it, and it's about 8 years is what we saw, and so we actually got the General Assembly to revise that up to 10 years, give little room just in case we didn't have a bad year. And as it's turned out, that's probably fortuitous that we're going on that 10-year cycle. Now, we get a real hard blow and the water come across the road and fill them up, but the thing about it is we've got some money there in order to do it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any more questions? If not, is there a motion? You don't have to, but.
I move that we adopt the plan.
I second it.
All right, motion and a second. Discussion. No discussion, you ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Madam Clerk, it's unanimous pass. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Christie. Asbestos cement pipe condition. Public Works Director, Mr. Clemens.
I'll try to, be as brief as possible, where I'm cutting into, make it cut into a third and bottom more. Gonna start off by giving a little bit of background on our distribution system. Some of you may already know this and some may not. Our distribution system was actually installed in 1978, and we're like 39 years old now. And we actually have a little over 21 miles of distribution piping in the ground. It mainly consists of about 99% asbestos pipe. And back in 2014, we had a lot of discussion. People were wondering how much the life expectancy of the system, and maybe how many more useful years of life we had left. And we come up with a program, decided to try to do some testing, and that testing consisted of a 3-year program to pull 3 pipe samples per year and send them to a lab for analysis to see if they can tell us what kind of life expectancy we can expect. So far, we're on our second round of sampling, and all the samples come back and shows we have a pretty good many years of life left before we actually have to do replacement. Our second round of samples were completed, and actually we got the test results back in October. Was a sample from Sandsburg Lane, Lumberton Street, and Schooner Drive. And out of those 3 samples, all of them showed we had a lot of life expectancy left. Sandsburg Lane was the least, and it showed 64 years of life still left in that pipe. The other 2 samples were pretty close to 100 years, which that seems too good to be true. I know that sounds bad, but that is true. We have plenty of time to plan for the future, and we'll all look like heroes because we're prepared for it. But with that being said, that's a pretty small snapshot of actually what we have in the ground when you consider over 21 miles of pipe, because that's only actually about 50 feet of pipe in total. And I just love to continue on with testing this upcoming year, and just hope in the future maybe we can keep getting results like that. Maybe we can have a little more something to hang our head on. It's a little bit better than just going to Kentucky lineage, because before we started this program, everybody we ever asked about life expectancy, AC pipe, nobody could actually pin a number down. We heard 40, 50 years, but so far, from what we've seen on the results, we're in pretty good shape. But that could change at any time, but I hope not. And if anybody's got any questions that I might can answer, I'll do my best, and if not, if I can't answer them, I'll hand them off to Shane, and he can fill in for me.
Mr. Clemens,
Yes, sir.
is there a place in the island, some part of it that would be more vulnerable than others because of the texture of the land or the dirt?
Is a possibility. So far, we've actually spread out, and we've done some samples on the east end of the island, and we've done some in the central section, and we've done some on the westerly section. On this 3rd round of sampling, being that sample that we had at Sandsburg Street was actually showing it degraded at a little higher rate than the other samples, I'm probably gonna pull another sample in that same area, because really, that could be just a bad piece of pipe in the manufacturing process. We really don't know, but if we take a sample in that same area, we can see if we see a pattern. And probably also, we'll probably do some soil samples in that area too, and see if we can probably put together something other than maybe point us some direction to go with the next round. But other than that, that's really about all I got, and that's about as brief as I can get with a 34-page report in just a few minutes.
I have one comment, in my uneducated assessment of this, since I'm by no means an expert. It seems to me that a 1 to 2 year frequency for further inspections, given the results of this being that we have 60 to 100 years lifespan, that seems to be a bit excessive in terms of frequency of inspection.
Well, it would seem so. Actually, like I said, I mean, what we're seeing so far, that's only 50 foot of total pipe that we've actually tested, and I'm following you there. It may be, we may run a couple more rounds, and it looks so good that we can elect to bail out, we can bail out at any
Okay.
time.
And this
But I
is
do
the
feel like
first, this is our first try at it.
I do
Okay.
feel like that this was, was a good effort, and probably a better answer that I could give somebody other than just saying, well, it's gonna fail in 20 or 30 years. But after we make that next round of samples, maybe we can determine whether we want to keep pushing on in that
Got it.
direction.
It's certainly good news.
Yeah, it's better news than I anticipated, because I really,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to picture a water line being in service for 100 years. If AC line will do that, I would think PVC pipe would probably go 150, 200, 200
Yep,
years.
yep.
Well, one thing that I'd like to point out is that pipe was put in the ground at the same time that the main line, the main feed line came over from Wilmington that we just had the break on right after Matthews. So that's the same age of pipe that was put in the ground. So just, you know, this, I don't know what kind of sampling that other lines are going through, but at least we do have something to hang our hat on. We do have a
And
program
also,
to try to.
too, actually, to point out, I don't know, they do a lot of extensive tests on that line, and I was reading through some of it. And for an example, like the pressure test, that pipe is rated at 150 PSI, and the pressure test on it, they tested it 4 times to operate, or that rated pressure, and the failure rate of that line to fail was 675 PSI, so that's pretty
Pretty
high.
good stuff.
Yeah.
And when you look at your crud, they actually do a crud test too, where they cut a foot piece of it, see how many pounds per square feet it can stand pressure wise that way. I think that one failed at like 77, 60, and the other two were like 10,000, a little over 10,000 pounds. AC line, as bad as it may sound, you know, asbestos, I mean, that's not a good word, but from what I've seen, it holds up pretty well if you don't disturb the soil or anything around it. I know since sewer got installed, we had a few main breaks along the boulevard, but the past few years, we haven't had any failures, but I'll let we keep monitoring and proceed, maybe we figure out where to head to in the next few years.
So when they're doing this testing, I mean, you hear the word asbestos, are they looking at, is this asbestos leaching into the soil or into the water? Are they looking
I
at
think
safety too?
Yeah, I think that's part of that test, but for the sort of cool everybody else safety wise, we actually have to take an asbestos sample every few years to make sure we don't have asbestos that's leaching out into the water system.
Okay.
So it is safe, and as long as the asbestos is wet, you don't have any problems
You don't
anyway.
inhale.
It's dry airborne particles that actually get you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, what are the costs of these tests? Not,
Those 3 samples, every time you ship them to Oregon, you're talking about $15,000.
okay.
And it's a slow process, because even after I get them out of the ground, you might be 6 months by the time you get the results back, and you can bleed over, you'll end up with about 2 years into getting one sample. So, we started in 2014 on the second round, or just completed the second round. So we'd be, if it goes like this past one, we'd be in 2017, 18 before we got to the third round. But it is, you know, like it is, that's the first time we've ever had any analysis done other than somebody saying, well, we need to replace the system. But it is what it is. So far, so good. Let's hope it continues to be that way.
All right, thank you for the
Thank
good
you.
job
Thank
you and
you.
your department
Yes.
do, and we recognize and thank you. Chief, you want to give us a report?
I don't want to tonight, but I'm ready. Good evening, everyone. Ah. The last several months since break-in season has started, I've been extremely pleased to stand up here and say that we haven't had any. Unfortunately, after this past weekend, I can't say that anymore. Since Saturday, we've had 2. 273 OBW, 1 TV was taken. That's oceanfront property. They're going in from the ocean side of the property, breaking out the back glass doors going in, taking a flat screen TV that's worth $20. I mean, anyway. And the first one was reported yesterday. 273 was reported today. 221 was reported yesterday. They took a small TV. Happened between Saturday and yesterday. They tried to take a larger TV, but they weren't smart enough. All they needed was a wrench, and they could have taken it off the mount that it was mounted on the wall with. Apparently they didn't have one of those, So they tried to knock the sheet rock out from around the mountain, and we're still unsuccessful. So the big TV made it, but they did get out with a smaller one, and about $400 worth of sheet rock damage. So I say all that to say this. We've had two. Both have been in the 200 block of OBW. We all need to keep that in mind because it's not restricted to that. And we all still need to look out for each other. If you see something that doesn't look right, please let us know. I'm thinking based on the one at 221, these are young folk that really don't have a clue, but are still out there, you know, wreaking havoc. So if you see something that doesn't look right, please let us know so we can deal with it. And the only other thing, it's been a bumpy ride for about the last week for us. Last weekend, during the ice storm, that sort of thing, I mean, it wasn't a super terrible ice storm, but it was bad enough. I mean, 16 degrees overnight, rain during the day, freezing temperatures. We had an accidental death of a subcontractor who was helping out with a remodel at 413 Ocean Boulevard West. For whatever reason, he had gone out on the deck and apparently, just a guess, I'm guessing he slipped on the ice that was on the deck at that point in time and ended up falling about 15, 16 feet and resulting in, unfortunately, his death. There's no official ruling from the medical examiner at this point. We're still probably 8 weeks out from that because an autopsy was performed, obviously, and toxicology is a part of that, and it takes about 8 weeks to get that back. So we don't have an official cause of death, but based on what I saw, it was an unfortunate accidental death. That's really all I can say about that at this point. Be glad to answer any questions, sir.
Commissioners, got any questions? Thank you, Chief. Mr. Hewitt, are you going to address number 10,
That's
the audit? Who's gonna do that?
that's the, probably audit committee chair is my name
Well,
on
we as a
there?
group need to decide who we want to be the chair of the audit committee for
I'm sorry.
the next year.
I don't know who to call on, so, y'all, whatever you,
Heather's the most knowledgeable one on it. That's a,
Yes,
ask the clerk about it.
so we basically have to nominate someone to
Nominate one of
the
the-
chair.
one of the board
Right.
members.
From the
You-
board.
You don't have to change it, but it just said in the ordinance that, normally each for a one-year term. So you can keep the same person or you can
So-
nominate a new person.
So right now, it's
I'm-
Commissioner
John.
Fletcher,
Yeah.
correct.
I would just renominate him. So whatever, if we just vote to keep him or vote to, I would nominate Commissioner Fletcher for another year term.
Second.
all right. Are there any more nominations? You want to approve him by acclamation?
So
Sure, yep. Yes.
All right. You got that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Unanimous, all righty. Town Manager, Mr. Hewitt, you want to talk about the budget update?
Next slide. This budget update reflects the town's position as of the 6th of January. It has been reviewed by the audit committee and a byline work session. It's a summary chart, by fund, budget to actual revenues and expenses, and the bottom line position as of mid-year. But it is as of the 6th of January. Discussions with the audit committee thought that it was better to show all the revenues that come in as of the tax date. Tax deadline is 5 January. So instead of showing the end of quarter like a lot of financial reports are, this shows the majority of those revenues streams that come in. Of course, expenses too, but the fact of the matter is we get a wheelbarrow full of taxes, sewer assessments, and also the canal dredging fees in right at the end of the year. So that was thought to be a better indicator of what the town's budget to actual cash position is. So that's what these numbers are. It also reflects that all the debt services that we've had to come due up to that date have been paid. Others, large, like the sewer, those are due in the spring and aren't reflected in here. The interest-only payment on the Central Reach payment project, that's also a payable in the spring. This reflects the escrow payment to the county. When we had to have the county to underwrite our loans, so we had to advance them like $1.4 million. That escrow payment to the county has been made. So the county's got $1,400,000 of the town's money that we're holding on to. It also shows that the Central Reach Project's funding stream is in place, the $12 million in special obligation bonds, and also the contribution from the B-Part fund, the $3 million there has been accomplished. And it also reflects the fact that the contract with Weeks has been encumbered. Now, what does that mean? Let me get to the bottom line on that. If you look at the chart, you've got the funds down the left-hand side, the general fund, the water and sewer fund, the beach, parks, access, recreation, tourism, B-Park fund, canal dredging fund, and the Central Reach capital project. Columns left to right, budget actual, encumbered, and the differences in. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth column, which is titled Delta. If you look down from the top, the first number that is a cash number is minus $664,000. This is a case where a minus is a good thing. That means that you're $664,000 to the good in the general fund. Likewise, moving down to the water fund, there'll be $685,000. It's a minus. That's a good thing. There's $685,000 to the good in the water fund. B-Park, $568,000. Canal dredging is at $1.6 million. To Mr. Royal's question of the money rolling forward, that $1.6 million will include the prior year accruals plus any assessments that we would have collected, unless, of course, any expenses. That fund doesn't have any expenses as of this year. They're really de minimis. They're stamps and that kind of thing. So the canal dredging fund sits at like $1.6 million to the good. And then, of course, the capital project fund, that's showing at $336,000. And what that is directly attributed to is that contract with Weeks dredging, of course, is encumbered. So once you take out all of your expenses to date and the people that you promised to pay, that's what we're left with in that program. That $336,000 $6,000 represents primarily construction management and also the vegetation and sand fence that we'll be getting into whenever we finish the project. And then, of course, the column on the right is just the ratio percentages of those same catch numbers. That's my report.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Good. Go ahead.
I'm gonna go right into the manager's report on the Central Reach project. Let me do this first. First of all, on the flood, everybody wants to know where the flood insurance maps are. We don't know. You go to the website, they're supposed to be, it's put into effect the 20th of January. Well, there's a couple things supposed to happen before then. One being a letter of final determination that's received 6 months ahead of that. We ain't got that yet. So suffice it to say, our conversations with the people that are supposed to know tell us that it's been delayed, unknown. We'll get back to you on it. So we do not know officially, or formally, or anything else that I'm aware of when those flood maps, the new flood maps will go into play.
Excuse me, David. But, and we are making regular inquiries about that. We're being proactive as far as not just waiting for them to tell us something.
Tim?
We have a wonderful relationship with the actual director of the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, who handles the FEMA stuff and the National Flood Insurance Program. They're partners with them. They actually came to our contractors informational meeting and gave an update. Pretty much said the same thing we just said then. We're in constant contact with them. I emailed them twice last week on other matters, but we talk to them all the time on a regular basis. They just got back in touch with me to let me know that they had some education opportunities coming up where they wanted me to participate on the education side. We have a very good working relationship with Dan Brubaker, who is actually in charge of that portion that provides this information. At the same time, we stay in contact with Regional 6 office in Atlanta for FEMA. That's who handles our area. You're not gonna get any definitive answers out of them because I don't think they're through. The last conversation I had was that they're not gonna get a definitive answer. They're not through with all the appeals and all of the other things that are going on with those maps, and the other issues that may be involved with them. But there is no timeline that I'm aware of now. There's a lot of speculation. But the exact words from Dan Brubaker was take your dartboard and we'll put some dates on it, throw a dart at it, is what he said. So
Okay.
that's the quote, unquote, right out of his mouth.
That's what I'm being asked. So just, we're very tightly integrated, which is good.
Talking about FEMA, that's an extremely large organization, you know what I mean?
Sure.
You know, I'm sure it's not hard for us to stay in contact, but, you know,
Okay.
it's one black bird pecking on a limb.
If,
Okay, thanks.
if the board would like, we can bring that original briefing back to to the board at the February meeting, just for the public's consumption on how that approval process is supposed to work, even though we don't have any, well, we may have other information, but if the board would like, we can do that. Water tower corrosion control, we've got the first monopole that you looked at there. 3 of the legs on the water tower have now, the antennas have been relocated over to the monopole on the west side of the water tower. We've got 2 more to go. Once that happens, then they'll shroud it, blast it, and painting to follow. When that schedule will be, we hope they're out of here before Easter, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Let me talk about something that seems to be going well, up to this point in time anyway. The Central Reach project status, if you haven't seen it, coming over the bridge, you can probably look out the window right there. And where we're at here, the charts up on the screen We've got four categories of data reflected there: reach, permit window, contract, and volumes. The first and last set, the reach and the volumes, those are kind of the big ticket items. The reach being the distance or how far the project is. Out of the 4 miles, we finished about 20% of the project. Likewise, on the volumes, they're holding true also with about 20% of the yardage placed down, putting down about 55 to 60 yards per linear foot. The beach is looking like what they're putting down every day is the equivalent of a football field that's 6 feet deep. I'm 6 feet deep, 6 to 8 feet deep, so it's the equivalent of a football field. It's tall, a little bit taller than me. It's a lot of sand every day. The two internal or the two interior data sets there, I'm not sure that the permit window is really showing what I had intended it to, but the contract production versus our contract is tracking pretty good. We got a 60-day contract. Once we got them started, they've been out there today. Is about 22% all the way in. What's important here is the fact that our permit window expires the 31st of March. And that's important because we've got, if production holds steady, we'll put down about 20,000 cubic yards a day. We should come out the other end right about 60 days with about 3 weeks left in the permit. That's important because we believe we just might have an opportunity to piggyback on this mobilization and capture the Hurricane Matthew damages in this project. The 100,000 yards or so that has been quantified by our coastal engineer inside the Nourish project area, we believe that there's a good opportunity that exists here. So we're gonna put full court press on there to do that. Do not know if we will be able to accomplish it because we're gonna have to work inside that humongous FEMA agency, which has this other 3-letter word overseeing the GSA on the contracting side. So there are some special federal contracting rules that we're going to have to make sure that we adhere to. Suffice it to say, there's congressional interest in saving the type of money that we can if we don't have to mobilize on the order of magnitude of about $3 for $1 or $1 for $3. We don't have to mobilize. That translates into, we got a real small window of opportunity here. We'll meet with FEMA tomorrow and with the beach technical advisors to see if we can't bring this thing out. And I know that when we first started on getting this Central Reef project done, we had a question from the board here that said, do you think we can get this stuff done? And I was thinking, well, if Noel can get all those easements done, we can probably get it done. I'm not standing as tall or with my shoulders back as far, confident that we can get it done, but we're going to make a hard run at it and see if we can pull it off. At the surface level, it makes perfectly good sense to do this. But it is federal government, y'all, so we'll see.
David?
I'm just glad that we got the response back from them when we initiated conversations with them last week.
We're talking 100,000 yards of sand. Would we be
Approximately.
limited on where we can put it?
Gotta be in the project area.
even though the sand was lost elsewhere on the,
Gotta be in the project.
gotta be in the Central Reach project.
Next slide, speaking of Matthew, we do have the cleanup, in the advance, or the cleanup underway in advance of the sand placement going on. Some of you may have seen some of these piles like are shown here in this picture. We've got this is work being done by a contractor, FEMA reimbursable contractor. This is some of the examples of things you may see out there. He's piling it up and then we'll drag it off. Next slide.
David, that's the entire beach, right?
Inlet to inlet. Inlet to inlet. We were concentrating on the project area first, so we could get out of the contractor's way, because if we're in the contractor's way, that normally directly correlates or results in a change order. And those change orders are expensive. So, anyway, just a note to talk about what we are picking up and what we're not picking up. If I could generalize and say the man-made materials are what we're picking up, these little hummocks or piles of marsh grass, we're not picking those up, and the reason why, it's like, makes a sand dune, and these are a close-up shot of that little savanna out there, and showing exactly how your sand dunes are made. Next slide. So if you're tempted to rake that stuff up and carry it out to the dumpster and get rid of it, don't, because those are baby dunes and it won't take long for them to reach substantial size. Next slide. Here's an example of an enterprising individual that has, I thought was fairly shrewd in what they've done. There's a breach in the dune in front of their house, and they've actually gone up there and raked it up. This is probably a distance as far as this dais is, maybe calf high. I would venture to guess that by this time in 10 to 14 days, that grass is going to be a small dune there, because the wind's going to come back from the west and south here the next couple of days, and the way this portion of the beach is oriented. So anyway, that's the deal on the strand cleanup result from Hurricane Matthew. I think that's the last slide. I do want to speak to upcoming Lockwood Folly inlet navigation dredging. Not only are we taking calls up here about the inlet being shoaled up, but the county is being hammered on it as well. There is an inlet crossing waterway project scheduled in March that is scheduled to put about 60,000 cubic yards of sand on the Holden Beach east end. This is a small pipeline dredge versus what we're seeing out here in the ocean with a hopper dredge. The county is interested in perhaps piggybacking with another 60,000 yards from the Ben Widener up there, and I'm working with the county on developing a decision package to bring forward to the commissioners on that. There's 2/3 of funding from the state is available to do it. Brunswick County has expressed interest in splitting the other third. So if we put those things into play in addition to the Matthew things, although this effort is separate and apart from the Matthew effort, looks like that estimated cost for the town is in the $75,000 to $100,000 range, which would be putting collectively about another 120,000 cubic yards on the east end of the beach, which is less than $2 a yard. Just as a point of reference, without mobilization, we're paying $10 a yard for the sand of the Central Reach.
Mr. Hewitt, did I understand from that Oak Island has opted out of this revenue sharing or cost sharing initiative?
Let me say it this way, when we've requested their participation previously, we hadn't met with success.
And the last time it was dredged, they also did not participate?
That was the only time that I've gone up there and asked, was the last time that we did the feedback project.
But they've indicated currently they are not interested in,
Haven't had that discussion with them. The
Okay.
county's actually gonna coordinate with them. And there is a follow-on piece of it, because the inlet crossing up here is just a piece of the inlet. There is navigation required in the inlet throat on the outer bar. That core sidecaster is scheduled for 2 weeks in the March-April timeframe, with the funding source on that uncertain at this date. What's happening is that there's a memorandum of agreement in place that allows the state, the Corps, to accept funds from the state, and there is a direct correlation between how much money is provided to the Corps through that mechanism and how much inlet gets dredged. To date, we're seeing the Corps' newest dredge, the Merton. Dare County has sought away about $3 million up there on the north end, and they pretty much got them scheduled for the next 8 to 10 months. Carolina Beach, New Hanover County, they've got a pretty good war chest going over there, and are scheduled also in April. Those discussions with the county too, I'll try to integrate that effort and bring it back to the board for what I can find out. Because just taking care of there's 2 plugs going in, just taking care of one, is better than nothing, and we might be able to work it. I know that the merit is, I think it's at Carolina Beach right now, and it might be that we can get them down here just to cut a little feeder ditch out while we take care of the crossing, but we got some work to do there. We're meeting with the county tomorrow, in addition with the FEMA guys to talk about that.
David, is Ocean Isle doing anything to clear out with the Shalote?
They're gonna get the inlet crossing, core effort. That's the schedule after they leave, Lockwood Folly, they'll go to Shalote Inlet and do the crossing. Now, the outer bar, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know where they'll be on that.
David, if we do dredging during turtle season, are we restricted about where the sand can go?
Normally, you're restricted to sidecaster operations in the summertime. But with the new shallow draft inlet permit, there are, which allows for beach deposition, we've still got the same permit windows, so we can't put sand on the beach in the summertime, is the short version as it exists today, unless there's extenuating circumstances. So that's why in the summertime, you see the sidecaster dredge operate exclusively in what I call the inlet throat, and not a typical cutter head dredge. It's a barge type operation over here on the inland waters, if you will. To the establishment, to the establishment of the results of the Central Reach project, the static vegetation line, as a condition of our permit, we have to establish a static vegetation line is established whenever we put down a large project, or at the completion of a large project, 300,000 cubic yards or above, and that will happen, probably within the next 5 weeks if we stay on target with our production schedule there. So the Division of Coastal Management will actually come out with a static vegetation line. The Division of Coastal Management is the agency responsible for that, and we'll be establishing one coincidental with the end sometime, I believe it'll be okay, but we just have to wait till we see the end of the project. Solid waste contract, we're still working through that. Plan on having that for the board's discussion and action at the February meeting. Do not see any silver bullet or much on what different from what we have now. But we're gonna be meeting with Waste Industries later on next week to see if we can turn over the rocks and discover something. Lastly, just hitting on the report, I just remembered that I wanted to give the board feedback that the sewer assessment that y'all okay going with, that contractor has been put to work. We've met with him, we've provided him system plans and specs for review. He's been trying to get them back to me, but he just hadn't been able to get up, probably, and this makes no difference to anybody but me, just to note that Compass Point now has merged with McGill and Associates. Mr. Norton is the office engineer here locally. That gives them, according to Michael, that gives them some access to some more assets than they would have than they had before as a type of boutique engineering firm, smaller firm. But, that's the end of my report. Got any questions?
I get it.
Any more questions?
Nope, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Ms. Vicki Myers, Chairman of the Planning and Zoning.
Good evening. You directed us back in August to go over the large residential structures issue. You asked us to look at the problems associated with very large structures, identify holes in our ordinances that would allow very large structures to be built, look at what other towns are doing, and present a range of possible solutions. So we've done that, and you've got a report. Are there any questions?
Are you gonna go through the slides with us?
No.
Of the possible solutions, did the committee come up with recommended priority of those solutions?
Yes.
No, you did not. You did not ask for a recommendation, so you did not. We specifically did not. We came up with 9 possible solutions. We did throw out some that we didn't get through. So,
As presented, though, are they prioritized, the,
no, they are not.
okay. But the committee did come up on page 67 with conclusion.
Yes, we did. We do have a conclusion.
Vicki, when I read your report the second time again today, I come away thinking that we would prefer not to set a limit on house sizing if it's problematic, but in fact, the bigger the house, the more likely we're gonna get it misused. The bigger the house, the more people, the more alcohol, the more misbehavior, the more noise. And I think we have to decide as a board, and the town has to decide, do we wanna have huge houses on the island? Or is a 5,000 square foot house adequate for everything everybody wants to do, whether it's rental, living in it, or whatever? But actually, if we go to 10,000 square feet, 15,000, you're just gonna have noise problems, parking problems, fire risk problems. So I think we have to wrestle with that. But I'm
Right. You're
impressed with your
right.
report.
I mean, as part of our report, we talked to communities up and down the coast, we talked to their planners, we've gone through their rules of what they're going through. We are not unique. Our neighbors are probably cracking down on it a whole lot more than we are. We're kind of watching right now.
And they're all trying to limit to about 5,000 square feet or less.
It
No, they're
varies,
not.
it varies by municipality.
I think even from looking at this plan, we can see that there is an enormous, spectrum up and down the coast of how different communities are handling this issue. And it goes to the nature of that community and what that community decides they want to be. And that's kind of our next step. What do we want to do? Do we want to crack down and say, no, your house has to be this big and you can only rent it to 4 people at a time, and, you know, you have to have this permit and that permit and this, you know, it seems like you can just go crazy excessive with this, and I don't think that's where we want to hit. But there are some pretty wise things that I think that you did observe, and you did see that other towns are taking a look at. So tonight, we can't solve this. I mean, from looking at your report, we have a lot of information here to take in. So I think our discussion now needs to be, what will our next step be? You know, how as a board are we going to move forward? And I kind of think we need more time with this. We need workshop with it. We need, you know, to spend some time with this information and take a look at it. We obviously can't decide tonight. We can't even come up with a direction tonight in talking with one another. This is huge.
And I think also if we did, a big issue is going to be any enforcement. So I think we have to be sensitive to whatever we do has to be enforceable by the town. And right now, we did some with a noise ordinance, and noise is always a part of the problem with a huge group. Parking is always a problem with a big group. Those two, the police can deal with if we give them the right support and a scheme that is legal for enforcement. Other than that, it's really hard to go and count how many people are in a building or what they're doing. You know, I'm watching 4-bedroom houses have 12 cars around there. I'm thinking, where are they sleeping? If there's 2 people in a car, 24 people are in a 4-bedroom house. And I see this in single-story 4-bedroom houses where people are in the streets parking. So that's hard to go in and check. But if you do parking and can control that, the noise, and make sure there's no fire risk, no major fire risk, I think but my guess is we're going to have to deal with the question, do we put some limit on sizing?
So I agree that this is a complex issue, and it's still being, in other communities, it's still being baked. One community is going to the North Carolina legislation body to help, for their help, because it's so widespread. I think the recommendation is very wise that we, be very cautious of what we're going to do.
We just think it's important to remember that, we know that our beach is dependent on tourism. And no one wants to, stop that. We just think you should be
Absolutely.
very careful when you move forward.
You made a recommendation or a comment about working with other islands. And I have to ask David, is the new association of the island groups around here, is that a mechanism that we could use to deal with this as a group rather than just every island balancing by themselves?
This is an issue that has surfaced at the Resort Town and Convention Cities group at the North Carolina City and County Managers Association. I'm a member of that group. It's all over the place. Other than recognizing it or acknowledging it as an issue, many managers in that group, they're no further along than we are. So, I mean, it's like everybody's stymied.
So
But
that
to
group-
answer your question,
Yeah, that group
yes.
is not able to bring a resolution?
We've not been able to craft something that's intelligently applicable to
To everybody.
everyone.
And I don't think there's an easy answer. Every single town has a different and unique personality. And I think we're gonna have to decide for
But
ourselves.
we're probably in
what
better
we want.
shape than others because we are pretty well defined as a quiet family beach. Rather, we're not a party beach. And so we could have said we're going to be a big party beach or whatever, but we didn't do that. We've specifically advertised ourselves as a quiet family beach, and that people enjoy coming and resting and relaxing in a quiet family environment. But I agree, we need more work on, and a workshop is probably a wise move.
Yeah, with public input. I mean, you could do some pretty drastic stuff that some other people have done which I wouldn't advocate doing. That's why I think, I totally agree. Slow, public input, and I think it's really to prevent the next mega house or whatever we're calling it. Because right now, I think the noise ordinance is, I don't think there's a huge issue at this point, but it could
Right,
could,
that's the
happen
concern,
again.
is that we would like to be proactive, we'd like
Right.
to see you guys be proactive about this. And, we don't wanna see another house go in that thinks it's gonna be able to have wedding receptions.
Yeah, but there's a balance, we want to be proactive, but we don't want to be restrictive to.
To growth.
To growth, right, and to, the rental community, which is a big part of it.
That being said, I don't think any of us would like to have a big house next door.
Absolutely, yep.
I have a question for our lawyer, an opinion. If I bought a lot today, and my lot that I bought today was capable of putting a 15,000 square foot house on it, and the town changed our building code that says you couldn't put but a 5,000 square foot house in that lot. Now, I bought it with the thought in mind of building that big house. Could I turn around then and sue the town because they've decreased the value of my property? And it's no longer gonna be worth what it was worth when I bought it. And I can no longer put on it the home that I was planning on putting on it.
Not until a building permit is issued. I mean, I think I can buy land today, I'm gonna build a multi-million-dollar house on it and not be able to do so for a number of reasons. So I think, no. I think that what you're seeing up and down the coast right now is municipalities, and municipal attorneys struggling with, trying to put the cat back in the bag. So nobody anticipated these, event houses, and you're trying to be forward-thinking, which I think is this discussion and the planning and zoning's recommendation about how do we prevent this from popping up and down Holden Beach now, but also trying to regulate the impacts from the use that exists now. So that was the noise ordinance that we adopted previously, and parking measures, enforcement of trash collection and things like that on the back end, but then how do you address it and keep it from becoming, more than one house that you're trying to monitor? And Holden Beach is not unique in that regard. It is everywhere. And nobody has found a great solution to it other than, talking about, what the community wants, trying to figure out the best way to regulate it without, overburdening staff in, the regulations that might be imposed. So one of the things that was mentioned in this report was, permitting wedding receptions or permitting weddings, and, if for anything that you adopted like that, you have to think town staff is gonna have to be involved in that process. The realtors are gonna have to be involved with letting people know they have to have that. Who's gonna enforce it if the wedding's taking place or wedding reception? So it's a very complex issue. So I don't know what y'all's workshop procedures are, but it might be something that you have to examine more than once.
Thank you very much. It was a pretty impressive
Vicki.
report. Thank you.
Thanks.
To the entire,
Obviously, a lot of
Yes,
work
thank
went
you
into
very
that.
much.
I want to say one thing about this. Since 1969, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to at Town Hall and been through this same discussion that is going on now. In recent years, we've been through it over and over and over. And I applaud all you aggressive thinking people to think ahead and gonna solve this, because you will be lauded by everybody across the state, and we will be recognized as the most brilliant town in the state. I mean, if you've got a problem, it's always good to work on it, but, those of us that have been around a while have fought this battle numerous times, public meetings, on and on and on, and, I'll be happy to go through it again. But as has been said here, this is not something that's gonna be easily resolved. And, it seems like in the past, the towns that thought they had it resolved ended up in court and losing. So, anyway, I look forward to all the people that are gonna work and solve this problem, and I'll be very relieved to have it behind us. One thing that, is in your report, Vicki, one of the solutions, as I read it a couple times, actually more than twice, one question keeps coming up in each one of these discussions. Would you rather have, in simple form, would you rather have 2 lots with 2 4,900 square foot houses, one 4,900 on this lot and a 4,900 on this lot, or would you rather have a 7,500 square foot house in the middle of the two? You know, you get into all that kind of stuff, and there's no end to the discussion. But I don't want to talk too much here, I might get in trouble, but, all right, let's move along to the next item on the agenda. Number 13, frontal dune policies. Mrs. Eisenhower?
Yeah. Prior to Hurricane Matthew, a couple different people had brought up that we might need to take a look at maybe some exceptions or revisions to our frontal dune ordinance, and it exists to protect that frontal dune. And so we've got walkways that go out to our frontal dune, and there's all sorts of regulations that we have to protect that frontal dune, and that's very important. But in certain places along the island, what we have is a frontal dune, and then we have an enormous amount of land that goes on beyond the frontal dune, where there's estuaries and ponds and a lot of land that renters and owners are walking through and destroying habitat. They're making kind of cut-throughs into the dunes, which is allowing water during Hurricane Matthew, you know, making these little cut-throughs through the dunes beyond the frontal dune to come in and destroy that outer band of dunes. So I think what we need to do is to take a look at, and what we're going to do, I want to get the board's approval, is to ask Tim and Rhonda if they can take a look at this and see if maybe there's some exceptions that we can put into it, to see if there's a way that we can extend in certain areas some of our walkways so that it helps us to get out to the beach, and we're not trampling down that vegetation. We're not walking, through all this marsh. We're not walking through ponds. We're protecting those outer bands of dunes as much as possible and not creating those cut-throughs, which makes that path for that water to come in and destroy those outer dunes. I know down on the west end where we are, there's an area on the end of the island where our neighborhood had kind of just roped off, and we were directing traffic. Where we did that, those dunes are still there beyond the frontal dune. Where we didn't do that, and renters and owners just walked through and made little cuts, all of those dunes are gone because the water came in where those little cut-throughs were. So that's what I'd like to happen. Just I wanted to get the board's approval to ask Tim and Rhonda if they could take a look at it, see if they could come up with any solution to it. And to take a look at it to see if there's areas where there's just a large amount of land where people would have to walk. We're not talking, you walk over the frontal dune and you're right there at the ocean. This is a great amount of land that you would have to walk over to get out to it. So I don't know if I need to make a motion or just ask Tim or Rhonda if they would
Well,
look at it
my
for
comment
us.
too, though, is, you never want to have a cut-through to destroy the integrity of the dune, no
No.
matter how far
Out it is.
you have to walk.
Yeah, and this is a dune beyond the frontal dune.
And I understand, yeah.
Yeah.
Because once you make that cut-through, the dune's integrity is compromised. Good.
My only comment is I thought we had some issues after Hurricane Matthew where people had extended the walkway beyond the frontal dune. And I'm unclear as to if it was in fact an infraction of an ordinance, but I thought I recalled where the town was left with walkways that were not removed. They were obviously no longer serviceable, but.
And a lot of debris that had to be taken
Yeah,
out.
debris, so understand what you're saying. There seems to be some unintended consequences, though, that we need to consider.
Yep.
As well as anytime we're saying for certain circumstances
Right,
or certain conditions, we'd have to have a
very detailed.
defensible position to where we aren't
exceptions.
favoring one property owner over another.
The only question I'd have is, that's obviously a staff work product, and what type of time frame would the board like to see that back? I don't know what kind of time it would take to do that.
Well, I think what we need is to either have a motion or a request of consensus of direction to be given, so we can move forward, you know.
So I'd like to move to ask Rhonda and Tim to come to February's meeting with a draft of an exception to the ordinance for frontal dune policies.
I second that.
Okay, motion, a second, any more discussion?
Would we consider having our town attorney involved to ensure we aren't proposing something that's not legally defensible?
After it comes back, right?
Yeah. I'd rather see that before the board is reviewing it. But just
You
a
want the
comment.
attorney to review it before it comes to the board?
Well, I'm just mentioning it. Yeah, I think that would be prudent, or unless she's involved in process.
I'm happy to work with Tim and Rhonda.
That's just my opinion.
All right, so everybody understand the motion and what's gonna happen, all right? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Eisenhower. Am I next? I don't have much to say. Excited to see all the progress being made on the beachfront, and it's amazing the number of people that have been driving down and walking over the dunes and, to observe this, and, the shell hunters are certainly happy. One lady said that she found over 50 sand dollars in one day, and a lot of olive shells, and the list just goes on, starfish and all these other little critters that are out there. So anyway, it's looking good, and Mr. Hewitt and I were talking, there's a lot of advantage to that construction company. If they can finish 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time, can you imagine per day cost on 2 ships and all this other stuff that's out there? So they'll make a good lick. And I don't know how much longer the good Lord's gonna give us this weather and calm seas, but sure is nice that whoever's doing all this praying, they're very effective. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got a new seating order up here, and I don't know how you want to proceed. Who speaks next? Everybody's talked to me about that. What is your guidance?
You're the boss.
No, I'm not. I'm the weakest link in the chain, because I don't know
But you're still the
anything.
boss. Should I go?
I guess that you start with you, and
Okay.
if somebody didn't like the order we're doing, they can fuss. All right.
Yeah. Thanks for coming out tonight. We got a nice group. It's always good to get a number of people to see what we're dealing with. Know that the board deals with these things as well as they can, but we could use input also. So if you don't want to make the input before the meeting, but you still want to talk to any of us, we're all available. You got our numbers online, telephone numbers online, emails online, and we're anxious to hear what people think about the things that we're pondering on. So thanks again. Yep.
I'm gonna go right, left, I guess.
Thank everyone for coming. I want to thank the Planning and Zoning Board for their work on this evasive issue of very large structures. I know it seems like it's a solution in search of a problem, but I would ask the public, if you are aware of issues that you think need to be resolved through this issue, let us know. Otherwise, I'm inclined to just move on, because I don't know of anything else we can do, and I don't want to waste our time and your time. I want to just, again, thank our police officers for what they had to deal with this fatality. It's just another reminder to me of what the law enforcement officials deal with, that I'm sure I wouldn't want to have to witness directly, but they, from all I've heard, they did a professional job, and I applaud them for that. That's all I have.
Well said.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody again, planning board as well, planning and zoning, and that's why it's called planning, to anticipate things and make sure that we are aware of any issues that may arise and what other people are doing and what we can anticipate if we at all possible. I'd also like to thank Mr. Hewitt. Very creative, how, we've got a lot of sand moving around, and I like the idea that we're gonna use different mechanisms, different funding sources, different, just different ways of moving sand from one place to where we want it. So kudos to Mr. Hewitt.
Ms. Eisenhower?
I just wanted to say, thank you to David and Alan. Took us, my son and I out this week onto the beach. We got to go see the Central Reach project, up close. And it is amazing. If you have not been out, on a walkway that's approved, not too close, to just take a look at what they're doing. Their system is unbelievable. And just, I'm very impressed with them and glad that we are in the middle of this project and could not be more pleased with the progress of it.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Kaiser?
Just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Again, I want to echo the comments about planning and zoning. Some of the recommendations they made in the report, I think, are very thoughtful and could possibly give us some answers to our use problem. I don't know necessarily that the size is the biggest issue, but I know that the use is the big problem. And that's, the parking, the trash, the noise. The use is the thing that's driving us crazy. And also I want to thank David for his continuing to look for other revenue streams to help pay for putting the sand on the beach. It's nice to not have to do it all ourselves.
Thank you, sir. Public comments on anything that you want to talk about? Yes, ma'am. Give us your name, address. You look familiar, but I can't put it together.
I'm Dolly Mitchell at 132 Tarpon Drive. Those of us who've been here for a while, as Mayor Holden says, in '89, Hugo took all the walkways off the beach, took a lot of dunes. And when the walkways were rebuilt, they were rebuilt over the frontal dunes. And because of engineered beaches and the work that the commissioners have done through the years, the frontal dune moved out beyond those walkways. And I can remember sitting, I can't remember whether it was in this room or back when we met at the chapel, and planning and zoning came back with a recommendation because we were, making gaps in the actual frontal dune because the walkways that were built in after Hugo were further back than the dunes. And that's basically where those walkways have been up until now. And there was no action taken because it meant every person on the beachfront had to replace their walkways. So if you stay here long enough, the cycle repeats itself. And thank God for the dune work that the town has done under David's supervision and the other work that's been done, because we had that extra sand out there to protect us, and had that not been done, like Mr. Kaiser says, I'm concerned about large houses, but I'm also, because I drive 4 miles to the bridge when I go off this beach, and I see the houses, as Mr. Fletcher says, that are overbooked, that have only one trash can, and there are more bedrooms than one. I'm concerned about that, the noise that's coming from some of those rental homes, because in their own way, they can be as much of a nuisance as some of the larger mega houses can be. And just, if you would keep that in mind.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Oh, okay, ma'am. Ladies first, he said.
Quickly, it's sort of to say what Dolly said, but this is Beverly Compton, 1317 Ocean Boulevard West. And having suffered through 3 years of wedding houses, I sort of bristle at the fact that the large structure didn't have something to do with it, although the use, I agree, is the very problem. I don't know what you can do about it, but I can tell you how stressful it is to live in that situation. And just wanted to say that large structures are a part of it, when you get right down to it. When does it become a hotel in a residential area? That's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I'm Steve Gribben, 1341 Ocean Boulevard West. First of all, I'd like to thank and commend the town and the commission for addressing the walkway situation so quickly. I think I addressed the group in June or July, and you were going to address it, I forget what the date was, but it was a Tuesday after the hurricane. And to bring it up again so quickly after the hurricane, and with this immense project going on and all the other things, I think it's very, very commendable that you are willing to do that, to address it. And I also agree with taking some time and performing some due diligence before coming up with something to vote on. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I would like to make, I guess, one point. There's two common themes in the land use report, state and federal CAMA ordinances. And that is to protect the vegetation, habitat, and dunes, and then to provide access to the dry sand beach to oceanfront property owners. That's common throughout all three levels. And that's not what is going on down the west end and possibly other areas on the island. I sit there all summer long and watch people trample all over everything. This is Eisenhower's correct. You can see where the dune, that one morning dune is just devastated where people have been walking through, and other areas where they didn't allow that. The dune is still there, still 14, 15 feet of it. Made a big difference, big difference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I just couldn't let my wife get up here and speak without my saying something. I'm Ray Compton, 1317 Ocean Boulevard West. And I wanted to sort of address the situation that Vicki was talking about. I had gone to several meetings, particularly Topsail Beach, where the gentlemen that were working on large houses here were trying to do the same thing in Topsail Beach. The primary issues and concerns had to do with ingress and egress. This summer, I was going out heading west, and it was a fire, just a small kitchen fire, 900 block. And the police or the firemen were directing everybody down, I think it's Sailfish, a dead-end street, and nobody knew where they were going. It was starting to rain. Hoses were all over the road. Now, you have to picture the fire that existed in Ocean Isle, where 7 people died. They weren't having a wedding. It was just a large group of college kids getting together. But ingress and egress was a problem for that situation. I have been out to the West End where there were 100, 150 people drinking heavily, and all I could see was a fire with all the cars parked in and around, and see how the fire trucks were going to get out to the West End. The West End, believe it or not, is a part of Holden Beach. and we do not control the fire department. But one of the main issues had to do with ingress and egress and the safety of the people you're renting your house to. If you don't warn, particularly the rental agencies, you need to warn people if something like that is going to happen. And particularly the kids on skateboards, boards coming off the hill, right around Rowena Warren's house. I don't know if you know where that is, just up from me, about 13, 19, 21. You see families coming off that hill with skateboards and then see this massive group of people coming over that same hill that have been drinking at a big party. If you don't think that that's a problem, wait till we get our first fire out there, and everyone is really going to be disturbed at why we didn't do something. So think about not the size and how many bedrooms or how many square feet are used. Think about how you're going to service that house. Porta potties was an issue. There was one time where they had 6 porta potties out there because they had to have 1 porta potty for every 50 people. Well, that's illegal. You're not allowed to do that. It's an assembly of people. So we have to think about use the word assembly and ingress and egress for fire safety. And I really hope you give that serious thought. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm James Leco, Mr. Contractor here, got several clients that was interested in building their walkways out to the southerly dome. And I'd just like to say that, you know, really, it's a win-win situation for everyone involved. You know, they build their walkways out, the renters, the tourists, they got plenty of access to the beaches. If something does happen like that, the Tim comes out, condemns them. The homeowners are gonna fall over themselves to take these walkways out and bring them back up to code, because it's in their best interest. So building these walkways to the southerly dome, it's a win-win situation for everyone involved. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, number 18 on our agenda is an executive session. And Madam Clerk, you want to lead us?
Executive session to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to go into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a gathering that probably will not result in anything that's votes or anything afterwards. You're welcome to stay and wait if you want, but you'd be disappointed with any activity, I believe.